Hello and welcome to tutorial number 18 on the feeling, which is on these chords. So these ones. Alright, so as always, it's a very simple sound. So basically the deal with this is it's just a couple of extremely simple sounds all layered on top of each other. Specifically it's 4 of them. So there's this saw, which is very narrow in stereo. Okay, that's a square, fine. This square, which is very wide in stereo. This saw, which is very narrow in stereo. And then this sort of high-pitched lead. All layered together to make... and then a chord bass here. Which makes... So basically, I'm not going to be talking about the chord bass in this video, that'll be in the next video. So I'm just going to talk about these 3. So each of these is insanely simple. So we'll start with the saw. Basically, I'm not even going to bother recreating it because I only touched a couple of knobs. So it's basically just harmor, default, 9 voices of unison, no pan, full phase, as much pitch as you can get away with. And then burning compression, for some bizarre reason, not at the top. Wow, what a mind blow, right? Turn up the mid a bit, and then get rid of the low, because that's going to be taken up by the chord bass, and then get rid of the high, because that's going to be taken up by the lead. Whoops. And that's it. That's literally all I did in this harmor. Just unison, compression. The effects are similarly basic. All it is a Maximus with the low down a bit and mid and high up a bit. That's it. I just touch these curves a bit and that's everything. So without the Maximus, with. I just treated it as kind of a lazy EQ basically. So that's it for sound number 1. Sound number 2, the square. It's the same thing but wide. So basically I'm just layering 2 different sounds together, one wide in stereo, one narrow in stereo, right? So you can kind of hear the difference between them more easily. They stand out more easily. So you can kind of hear them both at once. Now let's talk about the square. This one I am actually going to remake in harmor. So, unsurprisingly, square. Turn up to 8 voices of unison rather than 9 for some bizarre reason. Maximum pan, maximum phase, as much pitch as you feel like you can get away with. So I turned it up like the tiniest amount. Next is harmonic unison pitch. So I know I've explained this before, but basically the deal is that it's sort of pitch on the x-axis, pitch difference on the y-axis per unison voice. So it's effectively just this slider here, but for different pitches. So if you do this, lower frequencies will have a lower value for this slider, and higher frequencies will have a higher value for this slider, right? That's basically what it does. So because it's a lot easier to have stereo width with high-pitched frequencies, a shape like this isn't a bad idea. Because low frequencies with big pitch differences with each other sound like shit, because they're very discordant and they step on each other's toes and basically just sound terrible. Like, if you ever tried playing a bass chord, you know, no one ever does a chord with bass because it sounds terrible. So if you do this, basically you just have less pitch difference lower down and you can get away with turning this higher. Whereas if I'd have just left this at the default, this would probably sound like balls. Yeah, it's kind of but a bit of this, because there's less, like, you know, discordant low pitch stuff. But anyway, all I did was set it to that kind of amount. Obviously the exact value doesn't really matter, but if you're curious, that's what it was. Next up is the harmonizer, which basically just copies some of the frequencies, but just to a higher pitch. So I basically just settled on something a bit like that. Just sort of a bit of harmonizer, just for the sake of shaking it up, I suppose. So without it, with it. As you can hear, that makes no difference, but never mind. Beyond this, just a volume envelope with no attack, no release. And decay a bit shorter, about this much. Whoops. So the reason why you have kind of a short decay is just so that it has more of a attack at the beginning of the note. So you notice the note, but it's not a loud brick wall which hurts your ears. Sort of a way of turning it up without doing your ears in, I suppose. Makes it more noticeable because it's got a sharp attack at the beginning, but quieter overall. Alright, and then it has basically an identical Maximus, which is just low down a bit, whoops, mid and high up a bit. And for some reason on this one, master as well, because why not? Alright, so now the third and final sound is this lead. So, let's open Citrus. Turn it up an octave, because I want it to be kind of high-pitched, to make up for the lack of high pitch in the other two sounds. So, operator 1 was set to a saw, with a volume envelope that's basically the same as the square, so that is no attack, no release, bit less decay. Operator 2 is a saw, but pitched up an octave, so 4 times. Except I didn't turn it on, so I'm not sure why I played that back. So just FM'd into operator 1 a little bit, to give it a bit more high frequency guff, I suppose. So next is unison, max voices, hell load of pan, bit of volume difference, lot of pitch, full phase. In the effects, we have an EQ2 with a high pass around here or so, and a bit more high. So here's this one, here's the original, which is close enough because they're all routed together into the same effects channel, which I suppose I shall do now. So I'll just call it Chords. Root this in there, root this in there. So that's the square and the lead. Now where's the saw? Here it is, 30. Let's route it into here instead. Now to play them all at once, I'll add a layer. So for those of you who aren't familiar with a layer, drop it in, name it something, my chord. And then so you can right click on this track selector to select a channel, channel selector. So I'm going to choose the square, the lead, and the saw all the way up here. And then click Set Children. So this is our chord so far. Now, all I did on this, what's it called, submix? I can't remember the name. This channel I've routed everything into, this insert. So on the original I added an EQ, but you can kind of see that it doesn't really do anything, so I'm not going to bother with that. I just added a reverb. All it does is a tiny bit of decay and a little bit of wet, something like this. That's basically that. The very final thing is that this mixer was routed into a channel called Subcut, which I've talked about before. All it does is it's just a high pass that cuts off the sub so you can hear the sub bass more easily. But this right here is the final sound. So, besides the chord bass, which will be in the next video, that's everything. So, hope you enjoyed it. See you in the next one.